Hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about squares and square roots. So square numbers and square roots. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get Mrs. Leverson to draw a square for us. So she's just going to draw a square. And we're going to give it a side length of 5. Now, what you should already know is how to figure out the area of this square. So the area of a square is A equals base times height. Now, the reason that a square is so cool is because you know that when it's a square number, all the side lengths will be the same. So base and height will always be identical when we're talking about a square. So let's just quickly solve this one. So A equals 5 times 5. So the area of this square is 25. And just because we should always do this, we're going to go 25 and then we'll go centimeters squared. Just because we remember, even though this is an example, we should always make sure that our units carry over. So the reason that I bring this up for square numbers is because we're going to talk about square roots. Now, what finding a square root is actually about is knowing the area of a square and finding out the side length. So I'm just going to get Mrs. Leverson to make a new square. And we're going to have that new square have an area of 121 centimeters squared. Thank you. So we know that the area is 121 centimeters squared. Now, what we're going to try to do is take the square root of that number and understand whether or not it's a perfect square. Now, a perfect square means that the side lengths are whole numbers. So, for example, 5 times 5 is 25. So the square root of 25 is 5. And we know that because that number times itself will always equal 25, which is why we know it's a perfect square. Now, 121 is a perfect square. So I want you to think back here and think of every number, every whole number you know that multiplied by itself, what it ends up equaling. So 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. And that's one way to solve these, is just to know with these younger ones, okay, is 121 something that I've seen before? And in this case it is, and I believe it's 11. So I want you, Miss Leverson, just to draw the square root of 121. So the square root symbol and then 121. So this symbol is what we do, and it's different than division. And the reason that we do it is with that little kind of check mark at the start is so we know that we're taking the square root. Now you can do this on your calculator, but for these ones, we're just going to learn how to do it on our own. So the square root of 121 ends up being 11. So I'm going to guess and check and say 11. So if you want to put equals 11 down there. And now there's got to be a way to verify. So whenever you're doing questions like this, we want to make sure that we verify. So the best way to verify is to go 11 squared. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Leverson to write 11 squared. And you can get rid of the, oh, perfect idea with the different color there. Thank you, Mrs. Leverson. So 11 squared, and that's how we represent 11 squared. So 11 squared actually means 11 times 11. And 11 times 11 does turn out to be 121. Therefore, we were able to successfully verify that the square root of 121 is 11. So that's just how to use that button. Now, I want to very quickly try to do something different. So I want all of that erased now, please. Thank you, Mrs. Leverson. And I would like for you to write 7 squared. Now, 7 squared, you're going to see questions like this as well. And what they want you to do is find out what that means. Now, we know that the 2 there, if we want to underline that 2, the little 2, that's called an exponent. Now, what an exponent means is it's that number, the big number. So if we circle the 7, it's the number that's circled in blue multiplied by itself as many times as the exponent tells us to. So in this case, it says 7 squared, so it's 7 multiplied by 7. Which will equal 49, because 7 groups of 7 is 49 total. Now, this tells us two things. So if it was a square, that would tell us that the area of a square that has a side length of 7 is always going to be 49, because 7 multiplied by 7, the base multiplied by the height, equals 49. What it also tells us is that the square root of 49, so if they gave you a question where it was just a square that said area equals 49, and you took the square root of 49, that would tell you that the side length, or the square root of 49, is 7. So there's a quick mini lesson on what squares and square roots do. I hope that this has helped.